Everyone, welcome. My name's Patrick Pheasant. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at NEAS, and welcome to our weekly webinar. And we're very, very happy to have Laurel Scott from IDP IELTS with us today presenting. And IELTS and IDP are a very, very important partner for NEAS Australia. They sponsor our conference, and also they're one of the very, very first groups to be endorsed by NEAS for their fantastic product and service, the IELTS Teacher Training Program. So they're going to be sharing some information today. But before I introduce Laurel, I just would like to give you a little bit of information about what's new at NEAS. Can we go to the next slide, please? So if you haven't seen the NEAS website yet, you will have noticed that we've introduced community endorsements to our endorsement opportunities. So as well as endorsing English language centres around Australia and in Southeast Asia, we're also offering endorsement for education agents, endorsement for products and services, and also endorsement for ELT professionals. Next slide, please. So if you're interested in becoming endorsed as an individual, we invite you to do this. It's free to get listed on the NEAS website, and it's quite an easy process. Once you're listed, you then have access to all of our core courses. These are online courses which you can do anywhere, anytime, and they help you understand the NEAS quality assurance process. Each of those core courses are very quick to do. They're bite-sized micro-credentials. And once you've completed those, you can then work your way up through our various courses and activities that we offer online at NEAS. So I invite you to check out the website, have a look at getting listed as an ELT professional. This is for teachers, but also for professional staff at English language centres, for agents, and also any other stakeholders in the industry that would like to be listed. So we invite you to have a look at our website. You might also be interested in doing the Master Practitioner in English Language Teaching. This is a new capstone course that we released in July, and it's a high-level aspirational course for those people in the industry that want to demonstrate that they're applying quality assurance principles to their work. So we invite you to check out the website, have a look, and we're also very happy to announce our conference for next year too. Next slide, please. Our conference is held in Sydney in May on the 6th and 7th, and IELTS is one of our key sponsors for the conference, and we're extremely grateful to be working with IELTS on delivering to you a hybrid conference next year. It'll be available both online and face-to-face at our regular venue, Dalton House. So please check out the NEAS website for more information about our conference. So now I'm going to hand over to Laurel. So very happy to have Laurel presenting today. Laurel Scott's currently working for IDP IELTS as the IELTS Progress Check Manager, marking systems integrity. She works closely with the IELTS Professional Support Network team, providing ongoing support for IELTS examiners and ESL teachers. Laurel has been an ESL teacher for over 30 years and has had a long involvement with the IELTS test from its commencement in Australia. She's passionate about the IELTS product and believes it to be a reliable, relevant, and fair language assessment. So without further ado, I'm very, very happy to hand over to Laurel. Please enjoy the webinar this afternoon, and thanks for coming.
Thanks very much, Patrick, for that lovely introduction. Welcome to our webinar today, focusing on how IDP IELTS are helping to support our teachers so our test takers feel more supported and confident in sitting their IELTS test. As Patrick said, I've been involved in IELTS for over 30 years in various roles: administration, teaching, moderation, and also assessment roles. The focus of the webinar today is to see how research can lead to innovation and how it can then end up producing preparation tools and products that support teachers and students. And we're going to focus on some of the tools that are available for you teachers and also for your students. And we'll have a look at the actual resources so you can experience them for yourselves. And hopefully we'll have some time to go into breakout rooms and give a little bit of feedback on the resources that we're going to show you today via chats and polls. So hopefully you enjoy this and hopefully you learn from it. So Why does IELTS support research? Well, there are various reasons. As a major test company, we have the responsibility to make sure that our stakeholders, our test takers and teachers, are adequately supported in terms of test preparation. So why is test preparation so important? Well, obviously, we want our test takers to do well so that they can get on with their future life. We want to improve their overall English proficiency levels, and obviously this will impact positively on their future. In terms of research as well, we're also looking at ways to counteract potential negative attitudes to IELTS. So obviously, with all tests, if you don't pass, you don't like the test, you blame the test. So it's important for us to understand the test, how it's assessed, so as not to spread misinformation. And there's a lot of tricks of the trade out there that are not actually correct. And so it's important that we can share information that's factually correct. So research is very important in terms of the continued development and improvement of the IELTS test. And if you have a look at the slide here, it goes through our research circle. So research is carried out, and then IELTS focus groups get together and try and act on the research findings. Resources are then created, published, and then they're there for teachers and also for test takers. But often they're not really well advertised, so teachers and students may not necessarily know that all these resources are out there, and a lot of them are free. So if you have a look at the poster on the left, you can see that we try to produce a lot of support materials for students during the COVID period. We're still trying to do it. And also on the right, you can see our flyer for the IELTS teacher training program. And I'll tell you much more about that during the webinar. We will take questions at the end, and if you have any questions that you would like to ask, you can also use the chat function. I probably won't answer them just yet, but we will get back to you. So if you have a look at the IELTS research program, you can see that it's been going on for well over 25 years. The IELTS partners offer a range of grants and awards in the fields of language education and assessment. So if you're studying a PhD or a master's, you may be interested in applying for one of these grants. The grants open every year from April to June. And if you want to know more about it, just go into IELTS.org. And yes, you can read through some research. So if you've got any questions, you can actually, there's a search function there, and a research report will come up and you can have a read and find out much more about it. So we've got a couple of polls coming up now. 3 questions that we'd like you to answer. So Cameron's going to just launch the polls now. So if you could please answer the 3 questions you see. And we'll go through the results of the polls at the end of the presentation. So what we're going to do, first of all, before we look at the resources, is focus on some of the findings from 2 studies, focusing on test preparation. The first study that we've looked at there is focusing on the teacher's perspective, and then the second one is more on the test taker's point of view. Both of these studies are online on IELTS.org, and both of these studies have been led by Philip Chappell at Macquarie University. So the first lot of key findings that we've looked at or that Phil Chappell looked at. He was looking at the impact of teacher cognition and classroom practices on IELTS test preparation courses. So as all of you would have experienced, I'm sure you're a general teacher and then you're told to go in and teach an IELTS class. Well, it's not as easy as it seems. And when you get some of the the question types, true, false, not given, for example, or you have to teach how to answer a task 1 academic question, it's actually quite difficult. So there was marked variation in how teaching content is presented. And it's very much according to personal interpretation of what the teacher thinks is key or important. And this can have a big impact on the outcome of how that student does when they then go on to do a test. Even though they've got good knowledge of test content, they also, the findings showed that there was an inadequate assessment literacy. So the teachers didn't know enough about why these test questions were developed in the way they were and what functions they were looking at. So they also found, or teachers reported, that they thought the assessment of the writing and the speaking was too subjective. And so this is one of the reasons why we've produced the IELTS teacher training program, to make sure that we're lifting transparency on assessment. And if you understand how the descriptors are applied to written and spoken performance, you won't think it's as subjective as you thought at the beginning. Also, there was a bit of negativity associated with the lack of feedback provided to test takers. So it was difficult for teachers to move on and try and improve if their student kept getting a band 6, for example. The second study that Phil looked at was investigating test preparation practices. And even though a lot of students did prepare well for the test, they didn't use the correct test taking strategies. They didn't prepare enough. If you think about some of the native speakers that do the test, they go in and then they're shocked by how they do. And they haven't looked at the test. They don't understand the question types. Maybe they haven't written a letter, or maybe they haven't written an essay for 30 years and they just expect that this is English, I'll just do it. But you can't just do it. Also, there was some test takers who were, they were trying to use different, they were going online and getting basically misinformation, myths about what they should do. Some of them have told that they must include a proverb in their task 2 essay. So of course, they're not going to do as well as they should do because they're overusing this memorized language. So these studies have resulted in a couple of things where we've tried to do more focus on teacher knowledge, and that was the teacher training program, and also on test preparation and test strategies for test takers. So we're moving on from research to action. How are we actually helping teachers to support their students? And number one, by making writing and speaking assessment much more transparent, by offering free IELTS resources and professional development opportunities, creating new interactive resources. We have a number of videos on YouTube. We even have a TikTok video, trying to advertise on Instagram. So just trying to give these free resources out to test takers so that they're better supported for test day. I've spent a lot of time in the last few months increasing our library of free IELTS blogs and articles focusing on test preparation and test day strategies, like trying to manage time. We also offer paid practice tests, and I'm actually the manager of IELTS Progress Check, which is an online practice test developed by the partners. And so test takers can choose to buy this, and they will get feedback. So this is something they don't get on the real test. So if, for example, they write their essays with no paragraphs, they will be told that they haven't used paragraphs. So this is really great that we're able to give more feedback to test takers. So we produced the teacher training program in May 2019, and it has really been successful, even though we don't advertise it. At the moment, we have over 6,500 teachers. And basically, it's helping to enhance their performance and effectiveness as IELTS speaking and writing teachers. Why? Because they have a much deeper understanding of the assessment criteria. They understand what the terminology refers to, and they learn how to recognize positive and negative features of performance in their students' written and spoken English. For example, if I asked you all to think of maybe 5 or 6 different phonological features that would be assessed when you're thinking about pronunciation, that might be quite a difficult question to answer. You might just think, oh, they had quite a strong accent. I think they might be, you know, accent doesn't even appear in the public band descriptors until a band 8, because it's assumed that we all have an accent. So it's very important that teachers understand the features of performance within each of the criteria. It also helps with professional development, and thank you so much to NEAS for endorsing this product, and also a big thank you to English Australia, because they've awarded 20 CPD points to each of the courses, and obviously today you get some CPD points as well for attending. So it increases the teacher's IELTS test content and assessment terminology knowledge. And I think the most important thing is it makes the assessment criteria more transparent. Now, we will send you all of these links that appear on the slides later on so you can access them. So as you can see here, the program is all over the world. And in some countries where they are really starved for resources, they've really jumped on board. And Iran is a good example here, also Saudi Arabia. So these are all teachers, and these teachers, their English can range from, if we're thinking IELTS, from about a band 5 up to a band 9. And so there's something in it for all of them. And we've had a lot of really wonderful feedback, and they're all begging for a listening and reading course, which that's going to be difficult to do. So we have over 6,500 teachers at the moment, and they're in 69 different countries all over the world. So this is what is involved in the courses. Basically learning what the assessment criteria means. So they get an introduction to IELTS speaking and IELTS writing. It's fantastic for general teachers who have never taught IELTS before. Most importantly, it explains what IELTS writing prompts are and what they're looking for. What is a key feature? What does it mean when we talk about tone or format? So all of the terminology in the band descriptors is explained, and then also what the writing prompts are requiring the test taker to do. We also focus on identifying negative features, because if negative features are present, obviously you can't go up to that next level. And so it's important for teachers to be able to identify these features, and they act as basically a block to that test taker moving upward. We also focus on the terminology, as I've said before, and the assessment methods. So understanding how, and it's all done with the public band descriptors, how they're applied to spoken and written performance. And then you as teachers get to practice using the public descriptors with lots and lots of examples, samples, all the way through the courses. There's also a warning that says that you are not allowed to give out bands, even if it's from the public band descriptors. And this is because only examiners can award bands, and these bands are awarded at a live test under live stress. So you've got to be very careful not to be awarding bands, particularly if you're an IELTS examiner. So we have a little bit of time now to actually look at the courses. I've got 2 samples that I'm going to send to you now in the chat. So first of all, we have I haven't done it yet, I'll tell you when I actually do it. I'm going to send you the writing course sample and the speaking course sample. So it only shows you a couple of the units that are actually in the training program. You've got 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes of looking at the courses. And there are some quizzes to do. I was told I was a little bit mean because I put a block on it that you had to pass 80% to move on to the next chapter. So you can actually move on to the next unit. But if you do these courses, you can't move freely. You actually have to do all the activities. And it's good because if you get a question wrong, you get to do it again. And this is a good way to learn. So I'd like you to go through the writing course first of all. If you look at the instructions there, I'll leave them on. Well, you probably won't be able to, no, you will be able to see it. So scroll through the introduction to get a feel for the course interface, and then complete Unit 3.6 and then scroll through the other units there just to have a look. If you're in the speaking course, why don't you play some of the recordings just so you can see there's video and also there's sound clips. And again, I'd like you to try those assessment criteria knowledge checks. No pressure, but really I've only given you a few questions, so you should be able to get 100%. So I'm just going to send you the links now, and then we'll give you a certain amount of time to do it. Okay, everybody. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at both the writing and the speaking courses. So it's done on the RISE Articulate platform, and then we then export it to a learning management system. So it works really smoothly. So what I'm going to do now for the next 5 minutes is I'm going to pop you into a breakout room. So there's 45 of you at the moment. You're going to go into 9 rooms. I had to use my calculator because I'm an English teacher, not maths. I'm going to put you into some rooms, and I'd like you to chat about what you think about the course, what you think about the idea of doing a course where you learn more about IELTS assessment. Please keep a little eye out. There's going to be a blue message coming in. It's a question that I'd like all of you in your group to answer. Try and be as honest as you can. So all you have to do is accept your room. Don't worry about being left out there. When it finishes, the Zoom screen sort of disappears and then comes back up again. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Zoom. So you're going to now go and join other teachers, and you can have a little chat and keep an eye out for those questions. 50, 60,000 views. My children are very jealous that I'm getting more views than their videos. So if you're going to be teaching something like true, false, not given, for example, and I will show you the TikTok video, only lasts a minute, you could start off by showing that, sharing it with your students, and then discussing the message in it, and then moving on to give your class. There are also teaching videos available focusing on assessment, and we'll look at one briefly today, but we have one that's out there again on YouTube. If you follow IDP IELTS YouTube, if you follow that particular channel, there's one that looks at fluency and coherence between bands 5 and 8, and it shows 4 different candidates, and then there's feedback on what they've done, and it's a really good learning tool. Again, as I mentioned before, students can choose to do a paid practice test and get feedback on their performance, which is really positive for them. There are also lots of free practice materials on IELTS.com. So this is a new website, IELTS.com. And finally, there are free IELTS webinar series. And I think there was one today, or is it last night? But there is another one on in November if you want to Google that. So if you have a look, you can see some of the titles of some of the articles that have been written recently that are on IELTS.com. And they will use there are official resources there that are used for some of these articles. So so you know that it's not, you know that you can trust the information there. So let's now have a look at some of the materials that are out there, and I will play just some excerpts. I won't play all of it for you. This one is a speaking test with an extract from a little bit of part 1, 2, and 3, and there's also comments on the performance. So I'll just play the very beginning of it so you can have a look to see what it's like.
Now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some more questions about yourself.
Okay.
Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it?
It's quite a small village, about 20 kilometers from Zurich.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very quiet, and we have only 2 little shops because most of the people work in Zurich or are orientated to this.
What's the most interesting part of this place, the village?
On the top of a hill we have a little castle, which is very old and quite well known in Switzerland.
What kind of jobs do people in the village do?
We have some farmers in the village, as well as people who work in Zurich as bankers or journalists, or there are also teachers and some doctors, some medicines.
Right. Would you say it's a good place to live?
Yes, although it is very quiet, it is.
Okay, so this gives you just an example of a speaking test interview, and it also then moves on to the very end where you actually then get to see the feedback given to this particular candidate right at the end here. So it gives a performance summary. I'll let you just have a look. There's only a couple of seconds. Oh, sorry.
Close will be that
So if you want to focus on how the examiner behaves through the interview, this is a really good example, and also on how they are applying the assessment criteria to the actual spoken performance. So this is just one example, and this is available on IDP YouTube, IDP Essentials. This is one that we just did recently. So true, false, not given is probably one of the trickiest questions, and it's quite tricky for, I think, teachers as well. I know myself as a new teacher to IELTS. I started teaching IELTS in 1990 when IELTS first started. I decided to put my hand up to it. But I must say, sometimes I would be doing the test at the same time as the students. And then when the answers were coming up, I was going, oh, I wrote false. Why is it false and not true, false, not given? And then your responsibility as the teacher is to explain why and to show them reasons for that. So it can be quite tricky. So again, using this little clip or using the blog that's actually on IELTS.com, you can give a quick introduction as to how to see the difference between true, false, not given. This lasts for a minute, so I'll play you the whole thing. And I apologize for the music. So there's a much more detailed blog on true, false, not given on IELTS.com, and it goes through quite a few of the questions, and it shows the reading text, and it teaches them things about referencing and referring back or forward to. So it is a really useful resource to have. Another one we have here is we have written a series of 7 steps to a band 7 for writing. This is one of our most popular videos. It's had about 25,000 plays. but it focuses on the 7 steps, the 7 things you must include in your essay to reach that band 7 and higher. We also have 7 mistakes preventing you from getting to a band 7. And also we do the same with band 8, because these are those cutoff levels that people need. They need band 7, possibly for university courses. Band 8s are needed for certain registrations or to do a PhD or something. So very, very important to people to actually be able to reach that level. So if we have a quick, I'll just show you the very beginning of this and we'll look at the first step.
Hey IELTS test takers, we're here today to give you 7 steps to help you reach a band 7 on IELTS Writing Task 2. You're welcome to pause the video and read as we move through the essay example. Let's begin. Step 1.
Oh, sorry.
1. Answer all parts of the question. First of all, you need to show the examiner that you have answered all parts of the question. How many parts are in this question? Yes, that's right, 3. View 1 and 2 and your own opinion. You must do 3 things to achieve a higher band, showing the examiner that you are addressing all parts of the task. Present one view, and then the other view, and then present your opinion. Step 2. Present a clear position.
Okay, so this is the example of the 7 steps to a band 7. And then we look at 7 mistakes. And I know we don't like to focus on negativity, but some of these mistakes are tiny things. For example, paragraphing. Some people think, oh yes, paragraphing is so last year. You would be amazed at the amount of people that will turn up, particularly with computer delivered IELTS, where the writing is just one block. And some of the writing is really, really good. But if you have a look at the public band descriptors, you will see that if you have inadequate paragraphing, the highest you can get is a band 5 for cohesion and coherence. And this could be the reason why people are getting a 6.5, because they're losing marks in paragraphing. Another mistake is using incorrect format by numbering things or using bullet points. Also having an unclear position. So even though you read the whole essay, you still don't really know if they agree or disagree with something. And then obviously spelling errors and typos. Some people ignore the idea that typos are an issue. You would never write TEH, but you would type it. And if there are enough typos, it can actually, if your hand isn't positioned correctly, a lot of what's on the typewritten response can be totally illegible. Overusing memorized language, cliches, proverbs. This is also a mistake because it's meaningless often. And these phrases are just being chucked in there to show that they're using collocation and idiomatic language. Also using these false surveys and research report statistics. Again, somebody has taught them that they need to put in surveys. No, they should give examples of their own country, compare it to Australia or another country, give examples of transport in their own town or city. These are real examples and they really support the ideas in a much better way. So we might just have a quick look at the beginning part of the mistakes.
Hey IELTS test takers, we're here today to tell you about 7 mistakes that could be preventing you from scoring a band 7 or higher in IELTS Writing Task 2. You're welcome to pause the video and read as we move through the essay example. Test takers sometimes wonder why they scored the way they did in the IELTS writing test and become frustrated with their writing band score. We are going to show you 7 mistakes that test takers make that prevent a higher band score. We will also show you the features that the examiner looks at when assessing your essay and deciding the band score. Let's fix this essay and turn it from a band 5 into a band 7. Mistake number 1, not enough paragraphs. This is a very easy mistake to make, but it's very costly. Look at what the band descriptors say. In this essay, there are only 2 paragraphs, one very long one with a number of ideas, and a 1-sentence concluding paragraph. Solution. Fix paragraphing and make the one-sentence paragraph into 2 sentences. Mistake number 2. Incorrect format. Task 2 essays must be written in essay format using paragraphs to show your introduction, body paragraphs and conclusion. This is an easy mistake to make if you are rushing. Look at what the band descriptors say. Solution. Remove the numbers. Mistake number 3. Partially addressing the question. Take time to read the question carefully and decide how many parts are in the question. For this 3-part question, you need to discuss both views and give your own opinion. This is a 3-part question, but they only agreed that wild animals should not be in zoos. They did not give you any reason why animals should be kept in zoos. They only addressed 2 parts of the question, and their opinion is not very clear or supported.
Okay, so this is an example of all of some of the links that you've looked at there. I'm not going to go through all of it. You'll have plenty of time to have a look yourself. But it's just a little example of what is actually out there. And these are all free resources that you can look at and use in class and yeah, and trust. And I know your students will enjoy them. I know I've shown them to test takers, and sometimes they will listen to a little video like that rather than you explaining stuff to them. So it's a really great way to have different resources. So as you can see, research is very important. So if you want action, why not apply yourselves? There are a couple of awards you can look at. One of them is the Morgan Terry Award, and this is for IELTS preparation teachers. And to be considered, you have to submit an overview of an educational activity or learning resource that you have developed. There's also the Anne Burns Action Research Grant with English Australia. But please feel free to have a look at IELTS.org to have a look through some of the examples of research. And we will send you, possibly in the chat, Stephanie might send you some, here she goes. So there's lots of links here for you to look at. Some of them are the Phil Chappell research that we really focused on. Very, very important to be able to look at areas that we can definitely improve on, and to give teachers more information to make everything more transparent, and obviously then it will help to support test takers. So we have 4 minutes left for any questions. If anybody would like to ask a question for me to answer, feel free to unmute yourself. Why did Anne burn? I'll get Stephanie to answer that one. So if any of you have questions at all about any of the resources or any feedback, I have a feeling that some of you may have done the IELTS teacher training program. I know that some people are doing it. Rob, I'm not sure what the above question was, because the chat is so long. So okay, somebody has a question about penalties for underwriting. Okay, so for underwriting is in a very short response. So if you have a look at the teacher training program in the writing section, it will talk, and for going off topic, I'll answer both of those questions. So if you produce a very short script, short task 1, short task 2, I want you to think of the word limited. And then have a look at the public band descriptors, and you will see the word limited repeated all throughout that band 5 level. So if it's short, you're going to have limited ideas, unless you are a really super writer, very succinct, and you can get a lot of ideas and support into a small amount of writing. But for most of our test takers, they don't do that. There's a lot of repetition. There's not much there. So short scripts will be penalized because they have fewer ideas, fewer grammatical structures, obviously less vocabulary used. So that answers that question. In terms of off topic, if you have a look at the public descriptors, band 4, task response. And if the response is tangential to the actual question, they also get penalized for that. So this is where you have test takers producing a learnt off response, or they see the word and they head off on a tangent, particularly if it's internet and they're talking about social media or something. So it is important that they do answer. There was another one there, pronunciation can be subjective. Pronunciation can be subjective. If examiners use the band descriptors and they look at a range of phonological features, you can say that it can be subjective if you are only used to listening to one way of speaking. But we're looking at how the general public listens to what somebody says. For example, when I first emigrated from Ireland, you might have heard an Irish accent here. I remember going in and asking for a coffee. And they didn't really know what I was saying, and I definitely didn't know what a latte was. So, and I remember an Australian friend of mine who was in Ireland, and they went into a shop and they asked for a Mars bar, and the person didn't know what they were talking about. And in Ireland, if somebody dies, you buy a mass card. So the priest is going to say a prayer for them. And they gave them a mass card instead of a Mars bar. So it is important that you use the band descriptors, you use the features that you're supposed to be assessing, stress, intonation, that's not subjective. Okay, if it's flat delivery, if it's broken, if they're using incorrect phonemes, say for example, they can't enunciate consonant clusters, these are concrete things that you are assessing. So I would say, no, it's not subjective, if that answers that question. Why is the same candidate take the test in 2 different countries? Speaking and writing scores differ. Okay, so if a candidate does tests in, the speaking and writing scores can differ. They can differ on every test day, but generally they're within a half band rating. And this could be due to the fact, have you ever taught your students in class? You've taught them a particular thing, you've all, you did speaking about it, you did a project on it, and then bang, that was the question on test day, or you did a particular topic that came up on test day. That can actually happen, and that does help, and that's why we try and get our candidates to read widely and to talk about a range of topics so they are ready on a test day. So if you look at statistics, you will see that the variation is minimal. 6, as somebody has said, they got a 6 in one country and an 8 in another. That is probably a very unusual occurrence, and I'm sure there'd be some other reason for that. In academic writing, is it recommended to avoid subjective language, referring to themselves instead of using I? In task 2, sometimes test takers will say, we, or it has been said, using passive language. It's much easier for the examiner if they say, I strongly believe that. Remember, this is an IELTS test. They've been asked to give their opinion, not the general opinion, and therefore it is important for them to say I. It's not academic writing. They're not writing for a professor at a university. So it's easy for them to, okay, I'm just looking at that question. Sorry, I'm doing a bit of answering and looking at the next question. Somebody has said something about inferring in part 1. Do you mean inferring from the diagram? Looking at key features, there actually is another article I wrote on IELTS.com. It's scoring a band 7 and higher for task achievement. So if you just go into IELTS.com, click on academic writing preparation, you will see all of the articles to do with writing there. Click on the one with task achievement. It explains very clearly what an overview is and how to write it, how to write a clear overview, including process diagrams, maps, etc. It also gives examples of writing introduction, and also on how to present key features. It says very clearly, do not try and interpret, infer information from it. And it is difficult. If it's a graph about people who eat potatoes in Ireland, I'd be saying, well, they don't eat that many potatoes anymore. So people comment because these graphs are real and it could come from their country. So they shouldn't be inferring information, and they shouldn't include any other irrelevant. They just present what's there. In task 1, the student needs to describe the data that is presented to them only, not to discuss why the data is how it is. Thank you, Anne-Marie. That is correct. So to present the data that is there. Some people ask the question, I'm asked this in the masterclass, if there are 5 countries and country number 1 is only 1%, do I even need to present it? Yes, you do. Each of those countries is a key feature. So if you have a look at that article, it explains what key features are, how to identify them, and it makes it a lot easier for teachers who are teaching IELTS preparation. Does it make a difference if the overview is written after the introduction or at the end of the writing task? Again, task 1, obviously your favorite question. When I used to teach, I used to tell my students to write the introduction, then the overview, and then move on to your key features. The reason for that was if they were running out of time and they didn't get around to the overview. There is no need for a conclusion in task 1, no need for a conclusion. But some teachers like to have overall, they use their overview as their concluding, summarizing statement at the end of the response, but they don't need a conclusion. So I would teach introduction, a rewording of the question, and then an immediate overview, a clear overview. The overview doesn't contain any data or statistics. It gives, I can see overall, how many do we have? We've got 39. So I can see overall that most people are not using their camera. I can't see you. That is my overview of what I'm looking at right now. So just a general trend, a general increase, decrease, something that's outstanding. Okay, so I think that is, we're almost coming to the end. Okay, someone's asking an overall score 6.665. Is their overall score of 5.5? Now that is something I can't really tell you, but if you do look at the IELTS website, IELTS.org, it will tell you how they're calculated. So basically you add 4 of them together and you divide by 4. And is that a 6 or is it a 5.5? Well, it's probably a 5.5. So it's very important that your students understand the band descriptors and they know that they must match the positive features at that higher band. Now, I've written these courses, so you'll be hearing me again, not hearing me, but reading what I've said during them. So it definitely will help if need be. So any other questions? And Cameron might like to come in now because we're just over a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we're just over a couple of minutes, so we'll just finish there. We do have those results from the polls.
Be great to see them.
To share them, so I'll just quickly share those poll results just from the beginning of the session.
And it's actually interesting to see that there's more people that haven't taught IELTS. So hopefully this gave you a really good overview of it. And not that familiar. A couple have completed the courses, which is wonderful. So feel free to go to ielts.com.au. All you have to do is Google IELTS Teacher Training Program, IELTS Teacher Training Program. It pops up first on your search and then go in there and enroll. I will warn you that when you enroll, we do the registrations. It's only me and one other person. And so please don't be impatient. Some people say, I demand my certificate of completion. I'm like, hey, this is a free course. So log in, but make sure you check your junk mail because often the automated response comes from talent and it doesn't come from a person and it'll pop into your junk mail. So if you feel that you've registered but you didn't get your registration details, check your junk mail.
All right then. Well, on that, we're just going to stop sharing the results there. We do have one very quick rating webinar. It's just a thing that we're quick checking, but thank you so much, Laurel, for presenting, providing so much insight into the program. and questions also regarding IELTS. Regarding the chat, I'm sure we'll be able to share that as well. So there'll be ways that you'll be able to also ask your questions to IELTS, I'm sure. So we'll also share the chat to them, and we'll also be sharing these links post this webinar. We'll look to also share the recording. That takes a little bit more longer with a little bit of editing. So yeah, we'll look to share that soon. Great. It looks like we've got quite a bunch of you just putting in the polls. That's fantastic. And thank you again. And yeah, we'll look to see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.